Welcome to the Rise and Reinvent podcast, where we explore the courage it takes to transform your life, lead with purpose, and thrive on your own terms. I'm your host, Nicole M. Jones, and today's episode is a masterclass in self discovery, authenticity, and rising above expectations. Our guest, Vanessa Robles, production director at Penguin Random House, a proud Puerto Rican woman born and raised in the Bronx who has navigated her journey with grace, faith, and fierce determination. With her green eyes and light complexion, Vanessa didn't always feel like she fit in within her community. But her story is a powerful reminder that people of color come in all shades. We speak many languages and we carry cultures that defy narrow definitions. In this episode, Vanessa gets real about what it means to stand in your truth, especially when others don't expect or accept it. She shares how her upbringing in a bilingual household, her mother's strength, and her own hunger for independence shaped who she is today. We talk about faith, therapy, leadership, and the moments that tested her most, and how she turned them into fuel for growth. If you've ever felt like an outsider or questioned whether you belonged, this conversation will speak directly to your soul. Let's dive in. Today, I'm delighted to welcome Vanessa Robles to the Rise and Reinvent podcast. Vanessa is a production director with Penguin Random House, and she has a very inspiring story to share with us today. So let's get started. Welcome to Rise and Reinvent, Vanessa.
Thank you, Nicole. I'm happy to be here.
Briefly tell us a little bit more about you. Not just your career, but really your journey and how you became the person you are today.
Think about that. I grew up in the Bronx. I am Puerto Rican. I come from a family that came here from Puerto Rico. My parents they came here. My mom was about 20, my dad was about 14. So they came here and had to learn English, had to adapt a whole different culture. So that was something they had to acclimate to and get adjusted to. But the Puerto Rican culture, in essence, is who I am. I was raised in a bilingual household. I just always remember speaking Spanish and English simultaneously. There never was a time where I didn't know the other. Even the way I think is in Spanish and English. So yeah, I identify as someone from the Bronx, someone with deep Puerto Rican roots, very religious, conservative household. I was always taught to go to school, work hard. College was not an option. It was something that my parents instilled in me early on, that I had to do if I wanted to be successful in life. What else? I had a sibling that I grew up with, an older brother. I would say that's really was the beginning of who Vanessa was. I didn't know who I was back then. When you're young, growing up, right, evolving and going through all those changes, you don't really know where life is going to take you. You don't really know what you want to be and where you're going. But now that I can reflect back as an adult woman with many years of experience now, yeah, I think my culture is important to me, that it's a big part of my life. My family is important to me, and education was important to me. It was important to me to be independent. My parents did divorce when I was young, and that was very impactful for me. And I would say it has definitely been one of the major points in my life that has made me who I am today. Um, so being independent was a big deal for me, and going to college was a way to create that independence and achieve it, right? If you
Mhm.
will. I saw my mom struggle a little bit with the divorce, and I just remember thinking, I don't ever want to be dependent on anyone. You know, I want to be able to provide for myself, um, and have that self worth. So, yeah, I would say culture, family, education, all of those things kind of brought me to where I am today.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. And so you said that your parents' divorce impacted you significantly, and that independence was something you basically took away from that experience. Can you talk about in that moment, like how you pivoted? How did you adjust to, hey, growing up in a household with both parents to now my mom is a single mom. I know I need to be independent. What did that do for you from a personal perspective, but also maybe even career perspective?
Personally, it was always mom and me a lot, even though my brother was around. He was older, and just, that age gap, he was doing different things with his life. And so I was always with mom, cooking, food shopping, taking trips to Puerto Rico on the summer. So she had a big influence on me in terms of that. Um, so seeing that I was always with mom, it was just always us. That was a big deal because at that point I knew I need to figure things out for myself. You
Hmm.
know, my brother wasn't really around. He was always doing his own thing. And since dad wasn't around, to a young girl, what that does is it shows you you cannot depend on men. And it's sad to say, I've been through therapy, and I had to deal with those issues. Um, but divorce can be very traumatic for many children, male and
Hmm.
female. But as a young girl, that's how I took it in. I absorbed it, that the men, they kind of come and go. And
Hmm.
so I decided I would be independent with mom. I'd learn how to cook, learn how to drive, because I saw my mom driving. I was like, oh, that's a road to independence, right? I'm not dependent on public transportation or anything. So early on at 14, I was like, I want to drive. Mom, help me drive. So got my permit at 16. Just making sure that I was doing good in school, that I was on the straight and narrow, while I was around in the public school system. You have some friends that were like doing weed back then and going cutting class and doing different things. I abstained from all of that. I wanted to go to college. I didn't want anything to derail me. Um, and of course, my parents did a good job raising me. My father was a detective for NYPD. So I knew very big enforcer of rules on what's right and wrong, right? Um, I had a pretty good moral compass based on my parents' upbringing and how they raised me. But that's how it all translated, was doing good in school, learning as much as I can in ways of the world, and so I can be independent. And I knew that once I was able to drive um, and finish school, then that would propel me into college and I can have an in. Um, so I think that's how it affected me, just being always alone with mom.
Hmm.
I was like, so then I need to do something to take the initiative and take my life, or at least my trajectory and where I was going, into my own hands. Um, it was interesting because being that my family at that, I feel like even though my cousins and other people were going to college, I was one of the oldest. I was sort of like trailblazing that at that point, being a female and going off to college.
Hmm.
And so I didn't get a lot of help. I didn't have someone who had done it before and sat me down and said, well, this is what you need to do for your essay. And this is probably what you should do in terms of applications or schools that you should be reaching for, looking for. It was all new to me and I was kind of going through it blindly. I didn't feel the support system was good enough in school. My counselors, they didn't help me a lot. No one really helped you, sat you down, and said, this is what you need to do. So I felt that I was just going through it on my own and just, um, it was difficult because I didn't know any better and I didn't know what I didn't know. So I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know what to ask, right?
Right.
It was a tricky spot, but I'm still proud of myself and I'm still proud of the things that I accomplished back then, even with the limited information that I had. Um, I still feel that I had a pretty good foundation, even though I did, my parents weren't together. I still feel that they did instill a lot of great things in me. Um, and that being that I needed to go to college, it just wasn't an option. It really wasn't. They were like, if you want to make a success for yourself, you have to go to college.
What was the mindset shift that you had to make from, you know, living in your mom's household, having her support, to now I've got to go figure out college. And then ultimately people start asking you, what do you want to be? What career do you want? And you're forced to make that decision. What was the mindset shift that was required in order for you to make that transition?
Um, I probably, again, it was that independence. I don't know that it never necessarily shifted at that particular point in time. It shifted probably around 13, 14, right? And then it was just that was what my mind was on. I was like, once I'm in college and I can take advantage of everything that's there, I'm going to be able to make it on my own. Um, I enjoyed, I gotta say, being away. Um, I was always, again, because I was always doing a lot of things with mom, she sort of raised me to be independent, even though there were a lot of, in a Puerto Rican household, they're very gender dominated roles, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
but she set me up for success in that sense, right? Um, so when I got to college, I don't feel that there was necessarily a shift. It was
Okay.
already there. I was already there. And I knew what I needed to do. I knew I needed to be successful. I needed to focus. I needed to do a good job and get my grades and be disciplined and go to class and graduate. And hopefully, upon graduating, everything will fall into place the way everybody kept telling me.
Mm-hmm.
Go to college, you get a job, you have a career, things will go well for you. That was the recipe in my head. That was the recipe for success that my parents drilled in me, right? You go to college,
Mm-hmm.
you get a job, that's success.
Okay.
It was a little narrow minded now that I see it back now as a grown woman, but it was a good start.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that. That independence seems to be a consistent theme in your life, that maybe gets you through some of those pivotal moments, those uncertain moments, and things like that. So that's great. What, um, when life is unpredictable, how do you stay centered and clear headed?
Right away, I'm going to go to prayer. I'm going to go
Okay.
to God. Um, Absolutely, without a doubt. If I didn't have faith in a higher power and that things will always work out for my good, it would be a lot more difficult. So definitely faith keeps me grounded, and helps me through those difficult times that are uncertain. Um, I would say my friends. I have
Okay.
I have a tribe of girls, um, and they have been with me through thick and thin. My girlfriends. I'm gonna say Therapy is another one. Therapy and exercise. I would say that's my go-to when I'm uncertain, when I'm anxious, when I'm concerned about the future or the current state of, my mind or my surroundings. That's what I go to.
Okay, so along those lines, um, when there's a risk ahead of you with uncertainty, I know you said, God and prayer. How do you decide what risk aligns with your purpose and your goals versus something that might be a distraction?
Definitely. So yes, it has to feel good in my soul, when something feels right and I know that it's a good fit with the task at hand or the endeavor. Does it, like you said, does it align with my values, with my what I'm trying to put out in the world, right? Um, so I think that's what determines for me if it feels solid, despite me being fearful, because
Hmm.
that's going to be there. And I acknowledge that. Despite me feeling uncomfortable, I recognize that even with the fear and that uncomfortable feeling, there's still something inside of me that tells me this is the path. And I think it's because I do ask God about it. I do sit down in prayer and I say, is this the path you want me to go down? And if it is, I know you're going to open those doors and continue to lead the way, right? Lead that path and have it be open. If not, I'm looking for some sort of obstacle or something to tell me that's
Hmm.
not the direction you should go in. Um, a good example is that recently, a couple of months back, I started teaching. I work in book production, and I was approached to teach a class in book production. While it sounded very exciting, I was apprehensive. I was like, well, for the first thing you think of is this legit? The second thing you think of is, maybe I've never taught a class before. A little bit of like that insecurity comes in, right? A little bit
Hmm.
of the self-doubt comes in.
Hmm.
And you're like, oh, this is risky. What if I do it and it bombs, and I don't do good? And the students don't like my material, or I'm just a horrible teacher. So that's when I center myself in prayer and I ask God, if this is for me. I know as I am investigating and I'm going through the process, things will align. I will feel better about it despite having a little bit of fear. Um, and that's how I handle it. And I actually am finishing the course tonight. So I'm very excited that I took that opportunity and that things did work out, but it was prayer. It was despite feeling apprehensive and nervous, going through those motions and asking questions, finding out more about the organization. What are they doing?
Hmm.
And so, yeah, so I did take that leap of faith. I am teaching the course and it's going really well and very rewarding. So I'm really happy that despite the fear, I did it anyways. Thank
Congratulations.
you.
Taking the risk, always
Yeah,
important to do. Um, in what ways has failure been a teacher for you? As you think back on your journey to where you are today, how has failure uh, interacted with your success?
definitely. It's been a big impact. So I gotta say, in college, the freshman year is always difficult. You're getting acclimated to lectures and having to take notes and things, and you have all this freedom, right? So I gotta say, my first semester wasn't the best. And when I saw my GPA, it kind of like, to me, that was failure. I was like, ooh, V, you didn't do that great. Not your best work. So instead of it bringing me down, it made me lock in. it made me realize you need to do things differently so that you get the best out of this college experience. Because there's no
Mhm.
way that you're going to fail or not do great, right? Like you have to be able to accomplish this. So that setback sort of propelled me. It motivated me. It invigorated me to key in and focus on why I was there.
Okay.
I would say that's one thing that one part of my life that I really remember and was impactful in that aspect. Um, Another in my work career, I've always wanted to work on faith-based books. And there was an opportunity where I was working at the time to propose and have this business plan on potentially starting an imprint for faith-based books because it was lacking in my particular area. Even though the company itself did have an imprint, it wasn't in my area where I was working at. And I took a big risk, hoping that they would see my vision. I did a lot of research and putting this business plan together and how it would be successful. Unfortunately, it was rejected. Um, the failure stung, but I also was proud that I put myself out there.
Yeah.
I also learned from it. Um, and I also, at that point in time, felt that maybe it wasn't the time. Maybe I'm supposed to be here and do something else. I need to hang tight. And so sometimes failure is not necessarily, sometimes failure can be for good, right? You learn, you grow from it, and you're like, I'm locking in. I'm gonna focus and I'm gonna do real good. It's gonna motivate you. And other times that failure at that particular instance, which it felt like failure to me, was telling me you need to sit and wait. And I felt that I just needed to kind of be
Mhm.
I was a little longer. Maybe that was where I needed to be at the moment. And I needed to be okay with that. Sort of like the saying, it is well with my soul. Like just let it be well wherever you're at and be content for the moment. Because clearly, even though you wanted to go down that path, you were hoping something would come from it. It didn't, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing. So that's what I'm learning from failure is that failure isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes it's meant to keep you where you're at because you're not ready yet, or it's just not your time yet. Um, and you can refine and hone in on your skills and who you want to be while you're waiting. What
Yes.
I've kind of learned about failure and setbacks.
And learning from your failure. Um, I just feel like failure can be sort of a dead end, meaning you fail and then that's it. There's no recovery from that. And when that happens, there's a learning that comes from it. I failed because I didn't do the right steps, or I took too long and somebody else beat me to it, or whatever that looks like for you. But also, failure can be a pivot. It's like, okay, I failed. I'm going to take another crack at it and I'm going to do it in a different way. So I really view failure as sometimes very positive
Mhm.
because you learn what not to do. And you also learn how to maybe think outside the box or do things differently. So
Agreed.
thank you for sharing your story and your insights because that is really right, on par with my beliefs as well. As you think about your career journey, so pivoting from, college into your career. So as a production director and even, the early days of your career, what is one unexpected lesson that you learned throughout your career journey?
Um, I would say two. I would say one is you have to be your own advocate. Unfortunately, people don't always want the best for you. You know, people don't necessarily care. You know, everybody's kind of doing their job, you know, nose down into their computers, and all they care is that you're doing your job. So I had to learn early on that I had to be my own advocate, and it took me a while to realize that. And so I was stagnant for a while in my
Mhm.
career growth because I wasn't advocating for myself properly. That's a lesson that I learned that no one told me. Um, the other thing was that you won't always be accepted for who you are when you come authentically, and that's okay. Um, I recall an incident where it was early on in my career. I was a young mom. I had just had my first child and I was returning to work. And my mother would take care of my son for me. So thankful for that. But mom spoke Spanish. So I would call up every so often to check in, talk Spanish. I was in my office, not talking loud, but it irked my supervisor.
Mm.
And I had never had that encounter before, especially, I had mentioned this previously when we were getting to know each other a little bit better. I'm a light skinned Puerto Rican Latina. Um, and most people don't often see it right off the bat when they meet me.
Mhm.
But I'm very proud of that, right? I'm very proud of being Puerto Rican. And I didn't think I'd ever have an issue with being able to speak Spanish in the workplace in my own private office. So I learned early on that not everybody will accept you. Um, you know, whatever your culture is, sometimes it may rub them the wrong way. But I didn't care. I was myself. I was authentic. I addressed it. We addressed it with HR. I was not standing for any of that. It was rectified in my favor, thankfully. But I would say those were the two most important things that I realized, that you won't always be liked for who you are and being yourself. And I was not going to stop being myself. It's important for me to be my authentic self, bring my whole self to work. I feel that everybody has something to offer, um, especially when their perspective is unique, their journey is unique, right? Their culture is unique, their backstory is unique. So I am definitely the type of, now that I'm in a managerial position, the type of boss, or I would like to say leader, that believes that someone brings the whole person to work, and we want to honor that in whatever way that's possible for them, right? So those are the two takeaways for me. Advocate for yourself. Unfortunately, I wasn't told that. And don't be ashamed of who you are. Stand up for it. Be yourself. And regardless if it rubs people the wrong way.
That is great insight, and I appreciate you sharing that example and that story. Um, what I often find as a double minority in workspaces is maybe people have challenges relating to you and understanding you. And so I've always been told, you know, share more about you. I'm very closed in a work environment. But share more about your personality and what'd you watch on TV last night? Are you doing all these things? And so I've had to sort of open up more, I think, to be accepted. And so, how do you, in your journey, continue to evolve professionally while staying authentic to your Puerto Rican roots?
um, so I try to take on projects that usually have a Latino author or some sort of book that has a Latino representation. I always enjoy working on those. So I try to take on things like that, especially because um, when you're doing, if it's for color, artwork within on the interior or the jacket, um, the artwork really matters, right? Skin tone matters when you're representing people of different cultures. We want to get that accurate. Um, so I enjoy being able to work with the designers and
Mhm.
collaborate with the printers on books like that that bring those diverse voices out into the world. So I'm very proud to collaborate with those types of books and proud of PRH with their big push and initiative towards diversifying the types of voices and illustrators and authors that they put out into the world.
Mhm.
So that's one aspect um, that I try to contribute, and be proud of. Another thing that I do is I am involved with the employee resource group at PRH for people of color, um, and I'm really proud of doing that and being able to. Uh, I work in the communications area and put out information to our community that is about people of color, events. Um, Sometimes they're just panels that we put together. Um, so those are ways that I continue to evolve and stay true to my Latina Puerto Rican roots, and try to
Mhm.
make that impact within the publishing world, the small impact that I can make, right? In whatever
Mhm.
pond I'm in, I hope
Mhm.
that I'm making some waves and ripples towards a
Okay.
better culture, work culture, and with what we put out in the world.
That's wonderful. I think that is so important, right? Because there might be this pressure to assimilate, right? You're in environments where you may be the minority.
Mhm.
And again, there's a lack of understanding around your lived experiences, your culture. Um, the only thing I would add to that is it sounds like you're leading by example. But another thing is um, education and information, right? Hey, let's go to lunch. Well, maybe you're virtual, but let's go to lunch today and let's go to a Latin restaurant, you know, and then you can educate on different foods and cultures and things like that. And I think we need more of that in these corporate spaces. I remember going to a lot of Indian lunches, and I love Indian food. And so, kudos to you for doing those things to show like who you are at the core and helping others learn through your journey and your leadership. So, when you reflect on your journey, what legacy do you hope to leave?
When you say legacy, I think of my children.
Okay.
Um, they are my legacy. While I'm proud of the work that I do, um, I have a good work ethic, but really, my children are my legacy. They are my biggest achievement in life. Those two, my son and my daughter. Uh, to be able to say that I raised two humans that are going to be kind, compassionate, empathetic humans and be productive members of society and make an impact on society. They are my legacy. When I'm gone, they'll still be here making an
Mm-hmm.
impact. And hopefully, whatever I taught them and instilled in them, they'll be able to do that with their children and so forth. And that's how I see my legacy. It's not so much what I've done in my career, but in who I raised. I feel that's the biggest impact I can have on mankind, on society, is
Mm-hmm.
my babies.
Okay. Excellent.
That's the mom in me. Yeah, sorry. Those are my nothing better than being their mom.
So, another question I have, I was going to preamble it, but I'm just going to ask it. What has been your biggest compromise in life and career?
it's hard being a working mother. It really is. That was a big compromise for me. Trying to, along with my husband, give the best that we can to our children,
Mhm.
understanding that just financially it's not achievable without two incomes. That was a big compromise because I knew that I would have to compromise being there and being present all the time. That was hard. I think it's a challenge as a woman, you know, to work, to find that balance, to be proud of what you're accomplishing out in the world.
Mhm.
Um, and also, you know, being there for your children. Um, it was tough because there were times my daughter would ask me, well, why aren't you picking me up from the bus, mama? You know, when I see other moms picking their kids up from the bus. And you have to explain, you know, I want to. Mama wants to be there, but, you know, we need money, you know, so that I could buy you things and you can have, you know, this house and things like that. You know, it's hard when you are trying to explain that to a 5 or a 6-year-old. They don't understand that. They just want you there, right?
Right.
So I would say that's been a big compromise because early on, when I was a young mother, my focus was more on my children and coming home. So I was doing my job, I was doing a good job, but I wasn't growing in my job,
Mhm.
right? So that was the compromise. I was like, well, I have the job, but I wasn't so focused on it and focused on my growth at that season in my life. The
Mhm.
compromise was I'm working, but that's all it's going to be for now because I need to go home and be there with my
Mhm.
kids as much as I can. So that was tough because I wasn't able to grow as fast as I would have liked, right? Um, but being a mom it was it took precedence in my life. But now I'm at a season in my life where that isn't the case. And I can really concentrate on myself and my growth and what I want to do next, you know? And it's invigorating. But
That's great. Yeah. Mom guilt is real.
it is.
It
And I think
is.
we don't talk about it often enough as women.
Yeah.
And I think I'm a Gen Xer. So I think that a lot of us Gen Xers were way more vocal about things than our, you know, predecessors were and stuff. So it's nice to be able to talk about those things with my colleagues who are working moms as well, you know?
And now with all the listeners at Rise and Reinvent.
Yes. Hopefully they can relate.
But that's what this podcast is all about. Those things that are never or rarely talked about, but important to our success, our journey, and everything, our legacy.
Mhm.
So thank you for sharing that.
Welcome.
My last question is, what does success look like for you, both personally and professionally?
So professionally, I hope that I can someday get the opportunity to work on faith-based books. It's my ultimate goal to be able to hopefully launch an imprint or work on something from the ground up and be part of that success in getting working on those faith-based books, particularly young adult or children, is a dream of mine. So if I can ever get that opportunity, you know, and continue to work hard in what I do and continue to make connections, right, and network, that would be success to me if I could do something like that, you know, take on more of a leadership role, more of initiating something from the ground up
Mhm.
would be great. Um, Personally, success is having peace. Shalom, as they say. I need that in my life, peace and just joy and health. If I could have joy, peace, and health, and my babies, or they're grown now, you know, and my kids could have that and see them happy and see them thriving, see my husband happy, my family happy. That's it. That's all I need. That brings me success. That to me spells success right there. I don't have to have riches, material
Mhm,
things.
mhm.
I just want to have that joy, that peace and health. I'll be happy.
Well, I wish you joy, peace, happiness, and health for your continued success as well. I thank you so much, Vanessa, for today's conversation. Thank you for sharing maybe some vulnerable areas of your life and your journey. It really helps to inspire others, and I am personally inspired by your story, from your beginnings to where you are today as a leader and a production director. And so, thank you, thank you, thank you. I wish you continued success, and talk to you soon.
Thank you, Nicole. I wish you all those things as well.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.